The Deep Space Monitoring Station at Earth Space Command had not recorded anything important in 3 years. Dr. Hayes sat in front of his screen, drinking cold coffee and watching the endless stream of cosmic noise. The screen showed empty space, radiation patterns, and nothing that mattered to anyone. Space was boring most of the time. That was what everyone said anyway. Then the signal changed. His hand stopped halfway to his mouth. The coffee cup hung in the air as his eyes fixed on the data. The pattern was wrong, not natural, not random. The frequency was too organized, too deliberate. Someone was sending a message. His fingers moved fast across the keyboard. He isolated the signal, cleaned up the noise, and amplified it. Words appeared on the screen, not English, not any human language, but the structure was clear. This was communication. This was a cry for help. Grabbed the phone. His hands shook as he dialed the direct line to Admiral. The Admiral answered on the second ring. She was always awake. Everyone knew that about her. "We have a signal," said. His voice sounded strange to his own ears. "Incoming transmission. It is not from Earth space." There was a pause, then, "Get it to my office, now." The Earth Space Command building was old and built during the early space age. Most of it was still analog, still mechanical in ways that made younger officers uncomfortable. But it worked. It had always worked. Admiral's office sat on the top floor with windows overlooking the Colorado Plains. Was already at her desk when arrived. She was not young anymore. Her hair had turned gray from years of decisions. Her eyes were sharp and cold. She had commanded Earth's military forces since humanity had reached the stars, and she did not believe in wasting time. Placed the data on her desk. The signal was still coming through, stronger now. "Play it," said. The speaker made static sounds. Then a voice came through. The words were distorted, but the meaning was clear in the patterns of sound. The voice was desperate. The being who spoke knew it was dying. The message repeated 3 times before fatting, isolated the key information. The sender was called their ships were under attack. Their position was included. The coordinates pointed to a location 30 light-years from Earth. "How long has this signal been running?" asked. 30 hours, said. "It cycled automatically. I was not monitoring it closely until the pattern changed." Stood up, she walked to the window and looked out at the empty sky. Somewhere beyond that darkness, ships were fighting. People were dying, and Earth had received their message. "Get me Lieutenant Cole," said, "and get me the tactical assessment on how far our fleet can travel in 4 days." Within an hour, the command center was alive with activity. Officers ran between stations. Phones rang constantly. Lieutenant Cole analyzed the signal's origin point and confirmed it was real. Captain David Harrison was called from his quarters. By dawn, half of Earth's military leadership was in the war room. "The signal is genuine," Cole reported. He was young, with dark hair and eyes that could read tactical situations faster than most computers. "The broadcast technology is different from anything we have, but it is definitely from an advanced civilization." "Are they a threat to Earth?" asked. "The message says they are merchants. They call themselves peaceful traders, but someone is attacking them." Admiral looked at the display showing Earth's available fleet. 3 destroyer ships, 1 carrier vessel. It was not much. It was all humanity had built for deep space combat. "How long to reach that position?" she asked. 4 days if we push the drives hard," Captain David Harrison said. He was in his 50s with a rough face that had been burned by re-entry radiation. He had commanded the fleet carrier for 5 years and knew every system. 5 days if we go safely. The ships will need repairs when we arrive." Was quiet for a long time. Everyone waited. The Admiral never made decisions quickly, but when she decided, the decision was final. "We have a choice," she said. "We can ignore the signal, let whoever these are deal with their own problems. That would be safe, no risk to Earth." She paused. "Or we can answer. We can show that humanity is not a species that abandons others. We can make a statement to whatever civilizations are out there. We are here. We help our own kind, even if they are not human." Captain Harrison nodded slowly. "That is a risk, Admiral." "It is," agreed. "But we cannot hide forever. Our location will be discovered eventually. A species that runs from its first contact will not earn respect. I am ordering deployment of the Deep Space Fleet." The room was quiet. Everyone understood what this meant. Earth was committing itself to a conflict millions of miles away. If the fleet failed, Earth would be exposed and vulnerable. Enemies would know exactly where to find them. But if they did nothing, if they turned away from the cry for help, something important would be lost. Some piece of what made humanity human. "Launch the fleet," ordered. "Full combat preparations. We leave in 6 hours." Captain Harrison was already moving. "I will have the ships ready." By nightfall, the Earth Defense Fleet was moving into position for faster-than-light travel. The carrier ship was loaded with fighters and supplies. The 3 destroyers were running weapons checks. The crews were ready. They did not know what waited for them at those coordinates. They did not know if they would come home. But they were going anyway. Hayes watched from the observation deck as the ships began their acceleration burn. The lights from the engines were bright against the darkness. Earth grew smaller below them. The stars grew bigger ahead. Somewhere in that darkness, someone was calling for help, and Earth had answered. The fleet jumped to faster-than-light speed. The stars blurred into lines of light. Behind them, Earth disappeared into the cosmic distance. Ahead of them, an unknown future waited. The would be there. The enemy would be there, and humanity would face both, for better or worse. Admiral stood in the command center and watched the telemetry reports. The fleet was moving fast, faster than any human ships had ever traveled. They were heading toward something completely unknown. She did not know if this decision would save the galaxy or doom Earth. But the choice was made. There was no going back now. The SOS from the had reached Earth. The alarm screamed 5 seconds before the ships came out of faster-than-light space. Captain David Harrison gripped the armrest of his command chair as the carrier shuddered. The acceleration was brutal. His body pressed back hard against the seat. "Exit in 3, 2, 1, the navigation officer called out. Space exploded around them. The carrier emerged first, followed by the 3 destroyers. The view screen showed hell. Ships were burning. Energy weapons cut through space like bright knives. A transport vessel was listing badly, its hull breached in 3 places. Around it circled 5 dark warships with angular designs and weapons that fired with terrible precision. The Void Collective had arrived. "Contact," Lieutenant Cole said from his tactical station. His voice was steady but fast. 5 enemy destroyers, enemy weapons charging, range 12,000 kilometers. Captain Harrison did not hesitate. "All hands, battle stations, weapons hot, fire everything at the nearest target." The Earth fleet fired. The human destroyer USS Calgary launched its first missile volley. 20 missiles screamed through space toward the nearest Void Collective ship. The enemy vessel did not even try to move. Its shields flared and held. The missiles exploded against the shield, bright flowers of fire that meant nothing. But the humans kept coming. The second destroyer, USS Olympus, began rolling to bring fresh weapon systems to bear. Commander Lynch sat in the fighter bay on the carrier, already in her cockpit. Through the reinforced window, she could see the battle starting. "All fighters launch on my mark," she said into her headset. "We are going hot, no holding back." The launch sequence began. 60 fighters poured out of the carrier bay in 2 minutes. They were not as advanced as the Void Collective technology. Their shields were weaker. Their weapons were less powerful, but they moved like water. They turned sharp angles that seemed to bend the laws of physics. They dove and rolled and twisted through space with grace that no alien warship could match. The first fighter squadron struck the nearest Void Collective destroyer. The enemy ship tried to rotate to bring weapons to bear. It was too slow. Fighter after fighter raked across its shields with laser fire. A few shields' generators failed, then missiles got through. The Void Collective commander inside that ship did not understand what was happening. The humans were attacking his shield with too much speed. They were not following the patterns he expected. When he gave orders, by the time those orders reached his weapons crews, the targets had already moved. One human fighter pilot named Lieutenant Robert Grant pushed his acceleration to the maximum. His body experienced forces that would have killed ordinary beings. His vision blurred. His heart raced, but he kept his grip on the controls. He was heading directly at the enemy destroyer's command section. The Void Collective ship tried to swat him out of the sky. Laser fire reached for him, but he was already gone, already moving somewhere else. Robert did not think about death. He thought about the mission. He thought about the ships that would die if he did not do this. He accelerated harder. The destroyer commander saw the fighter coming straight at him. He ordered an evasion that was too cautious, too slow. Robert's fighter hit the command center at full speed. The explosion was huge. The bridge of the destroyer fell silent. Fires spread through the corridors. The ship was dead. One destroyer down. The Void Collective did not panic, but something close to confusion rippled through their fleet. They were facing an enemy that did not behave like the hundreds of species they had conquered. The humans took risks. They crashed ships into each other. They used tactics that wasted resources by any normal calculation. But somehow those wasted resources destroyed ships. Captain Harrison watched the battle develop. His carrier was moving in a pattern that no predictable artificial intelligence would have chosen. He was flying his ship like a pilot flies, a fighter cutting angles that seemed impossible, bringing fresh weapons to bear from unexpected directions. The USS Olympus took a direct hit from a Void Collective energy weapon. Its shields collapsed on the port side. The armor beneath them burned away. The ship shuddered hard enough to throw people from their chairs, but it kept firing. It kept moving. Another Void Collective destroyer tried to pursue the Olympus. The human destroyer led it directly into the firing arc of the carrier. The carrier unloaded everything it had into that one target. Missiles and laser fire and rounds all hit at once. The enemy shields flickered and died. The ship's armor could not withstand the assault. 2 destroyers down. The remaining 3 Void Collective ships tried to reorganize, but the human fighters were everywhere. They moved in patterns that seemed chaotic but were actually coordinated in ways the Void Collective computers took too long to calculate. By the time the enemy figured out what the humans were doing, the humans had already done it. A female fighter pilot named Commander Lynch pressed her advantage. Her squadron had coordinated with the Olympus to trap the 3rd Void Collective destroyer between crossfire. The enemy could not move without exposing itself to one of them, locked her targeting system and fired. Her missiles flew true. The 3rd destroyer began to die slowly, losing power section by section. The 2 remaining Void Collective ships realized they were losing. That realization came hard. The Void Collective did not fail. They had conquered every species they had faced. But the humans were not like other species. The humans adapted. The humans created new tactics that the Void Collective had no response for. The commanders of the 2 remaining ships made their decision. They broke formation and began accelerating away, leaving the battle zone at maximum speed. "Do not let them escape," Captain Harrison commanded, but the human ships could not match that acceleration without breaking themselves apart. The 2 Void Collective destroyers disappeared into the darkness of space, running hard for their home territory. The battle was over. The convoy was safe. The 3 human destroyers were damaged but still flying. The carrier had taken hits, but its systems held. In the fighter bay, mechanics were already working on the few fighters that had made it back. 3 had not. Their pilots were gone, burned away in the vacuum of space. Earth had its first casualties in the war. Captain Harrison stood and looked at the damage reports. The USS Olympus had lost all power to its port systems. The Calgary was still venting atmosphere from 3 hull breaches. The carrier had lost 2 weapon turrets and a section of its flight deck. But they had won. Harrison opened a communication channel to the flagship. A voice came back, confused and grateful in equal measure. They had not known what to expect from the humans. They had received a transmission from a species they had never heard of. They had sent a desperate message hoping anyone would help. Earth had helped. "We are coming aboard," Harrison said. "We need to understand what you are facing." The commander, a being with scales and multiple eyes, stared at the human who came through the airlock. The human was tall and walked upright and was soft-skinned. The human did not look dangerous. But this human and his species had destroyed 3 Void Collective destroyers without hesitation. This human had sacrificed his own people without flinching. This human had taught a new concept, that someone would fight for you even when they did not know your name. "I am Captain David Harrison," the human said simply. "I command the Earth Defense Fleet." "I am Lord," they replied. "You have saved my people from death." "Not yet," Harrison said. "I have just delayed it. We need to talk about your enemy. We need to talk about the Void Collective." This expression changed. "You do not understand what you have done. You have made yourself an enemy of the most powerful force in this region of space. The Void Collective will hunt you now. They will hunt your world." Then we will be ready, Harrison said. But first we prepare together, you give us intelligence about them, we give you our strength. He extended his hand, a human gesture that meant alliance. Lord looked at the human hand. After a moment he reached out and touched it. The gesture the conference room aboard the flagship was too cold. Captain David Harrison sat across from Lord and felt the chill seeping into his bones. The preferred temperatures that would have frozen human blood solid. They kept the room barely above freezing. Harrison did not complain. This was business. The Void Collective has conquered 12 systems, Lord said. His voice had a clicking quality that the human translation device converted into English. They have enslaved or destroyed 43 species. They are not conquerors like the empires you might know from your history. They are hunters. They are expanding outward to claim everything. Captain James, Earth's officer, leaned forward. He was a thin man with careful eyes. How long before they reach Earth? Weeks, replied. Maybe months. But once they know you are here, they will not stop until you are destroyed or enslaved. This is the Void Collective nature. They do not negotiate. They do not stop. Admiral, speaking through encrypted communication from Earth, heard this news. She was silent for a long moment. What are their weaknesses? She asked. Made a sound that might have been a laugh. Their weakness is that they are organized. Everything goes through a chain of command. Everything requires approval from above. Your species is different. You think individually. You adapt fast. The Void Collective knows only one way to do things. He paused. But they are vastly more powerful than you. They have weapons that would destroy your strongest ships in one volley. They have shields that your missiles cannot penetrate. We have been running from them for 3 years. Today was the first time we have stopped running. Harrison nodded, because we do not know what we cannot do yet. Exactly, said, ignorance can be a weapon. Admiral was making decisions in real time. She understood what was saying. Humanity's greatest strength was not technology or firepower. It was adaptability. It was the human ability to see a problem and find 10 different solutions without asking permission first. I am sending reinforcements, said. The largest fleet we can build, not in weapons or size, but in something different. We are gathering every military person on Earth willing to fight. We are sending them to you. Why would you do this? Asked. Earth gains nothing. We gain our survival, said. And we gain our pride. A species that does not fight for itself deserves to be enslaved. Over the next weeks, more ships arrived at the staging station that the human fleet had established. These were not military transport ships. They were mining vessels, cargo carriers, passenger ships. Anything that could hold people and accelerate to faster-than-light speed was pressed into service. The soldiers came from every nation on Earth. Chinese pilots mixed with American engineers. Indian doctors worked beside Japanese mechanics. Brazilian mechanics repaired damage alongside Russian technicians. War brought humanity together in ways that peace never had. General Roberts coordinated the training from Earth Command. She was a tough woman who had spent 40 years in military service. Her voice carried absolute authority. You are fighting for more than Earth, she told the gathered troops. You are fighting for every species the Void Collective would conquer. You are fighting to prove that freedom matters more than power. The pilots trained endlessly. They flew formations that pushed their bodies to the breaking point. They learned tactics that seemed crazy until they understood the purpose. They were learning to be unpredictable. They were learning to think faster than the Void Collective's rigid command structure. Commander Lynch became a teacher. She took human pilots who had never seen combat and turned them into warriors. She showed them how to push their ships beyond what the engineers said was safe. She showed them how to see angles and trajectories that seemed impossible. The Void Collective thinks in straight lines, she told them. They think in patterns. You need to think in curves. You need to move where they expect you not to be. They watched all this with amazement. They had never seen anything like it. They had expected Earth to send military hardware, advanced weapons. Instead, Earth was sending something far more valuable, young people willing to die. Captain Harrison spent his days with Lord planning strategy. The leader shared everything he knew about the Void Collective, the location of their shipyards, the names of their commanders, the schedules of their patrols. There is something you need to know, said one day. The Void Collective is not united. There are factions within their empire. Species they conquered are ready to rebel if they thought they could win. but they have been afraid for so long that fear is all they understand now. Then we show them they do not need to be afraid, Harrison said. By the time the combined fleet was ready, the number had grown to something neither side had imagined possible. Not 200 ships, not 300, over 400 vessels, carrying soldiers and pilots and support crews from Earth and a dozen liberated worlds. Every ship was crewed by beings who had decided that slavery was not acceptable. Admiral came to the staging station in person for the final briefing. She was older now, her hair completely white, but her eyes were still sharp and cold. "We send a message today," she told the assembled commanders. "We send it to every enslaved species in the Void Collective's territory. We tell them that resistance is possible. We tell them that freedom is worth the cost." She pulled up a star chart. "We attack here," she said, pointing to a location in deep space. "The Void Collective's primary command center. We take the fight to them instead of waiting for them to bring it to us. We show them that humans do not run. We show them that humans do not hide. We show them that humans are willing to sacrifice everything for freedom." General Roberts sent the message out on a hidden frequency. It took days to reach its destinations. But slowly, signals started coming back. Species agreed to rise up. Commanders on enslaved worlds agreed to rebel. The Void Collective would not just face a human fleet. They would face a galaxy that was finally ready to fight back. Captain Harrison gathered his pilots for the final briefing before launch. "Some of you will not come home," he said. "That is the cost of freedom. That is the cost of standing against something more powerful than yourself. But you will die knowing that you stood. You will die knowing that your sacrifice meant something. You will die knowing that you fought so others could be free." He paused. "That is what makes us human. That is what the Void Collective will never understand. They fight for power. We fight for each other. They fight for conquest. We fight for the right to choose our own fate. Those are not the same thing, and one of them is stronger." The pilots cheered, not because they were happy, but because they understood. They understood what they were about to do, they understood the cost, and they had decided to pay it anyway. The combined fleet prepared for launch. Admiral sent one final message to Earth. "If we succeed, the galaxy changes. The age of the Void Collective ends. If we fail, the Earth will be alone and vulnerable. But we will not fail, because we are fighting for something the Void Collective has never fought for. We are fighting for freedom, and they have no response to that." The ships began to move. The greatest fleet humanity had ever assembled started accelerating toward faster-than-light speed. Behind them, Earth seemed very far away, very small, very fragile. The Battle of Sigma Draconis began with silence. The combined fleet emerged from faster-than-light space in formation. 400 ships arranged in patterns that had taken weeks to perfect. The Void Collective's main command center lay before them, a massive station surrounded by defensive platforms and guardian ships. Captain David Harrison sat in his command chair watching the scope. The enemy was there, waiting, not expecting the attack. "All ships begin attack sequence," he ordered. The silence broke into thunder. The first missiles launched from 400 ships at almost the same moment. Over 2,000 projectiles filled the space between the fleets. They moved so fast that the Void Collective's defense systems barely had time to respond. The first line of Void Collective defensive platforms exploded. Their shields had held for generations. The shields of 1,000 ships had never failed, but the humans did not care about shields. They cared about overwhelming force. The human fighters launched simultaneously. Commander Lynch led the charge. Her fighters screamed through space, all weapons blazing. Around her, the fighters moved in patterns that seemed chaotic until you understood they were not chaotic at all. They were coordinated by humans who thought fast and did not follow rules. A Void Collective destroyer tried to track one fighter. By the time its weapons locked on, the fighter had moved. It was not where it had been, it was somewhere else. Somewhere worse for the Void Collective. The enemy commander looked at his tactical display and felt the first cold touch of fear. His ships were organized in formation. His ships were protected by protocol. His ships were defended by the doctrine that had served the Void Collective for centuries. It was not enough. Below, on a dozen enslaved worlds, the signal was sent. Species that had been conquered rose up. They attacked their Void Collective overlords from inside. They seized weapons. They destroyed power plants. They freed their own people. The Void Collective was being attacked from outside and inside at the same time. Supreme Commander was the leader of the entire Void Collective military. He had never lost a battle. He had conquered empires. He had decided the fates of billions. Now he watched his fleet die and felt something he had never felt before, helplessness. "Order the Second Fleet to reinforce us," he commanded. "Commander, the Second Fleet is engaged with rebels in Sectors 4 and 5. The Third Fleet is dealing with uprising on 12 worlds. We have no reinforcements." Stared at his screen. The human fleet was moving in ways that made no sense. Their ships were taking damage that should have destroyed them and were still fighting. Their pilots were crashing directly into enemy vessels when they ran out of conventional weapons. A human destroyer named USS Calgary took a direct hit that should have killed everyone aboard. The bridge was destroyed. The captain died along with his command crew, but the ship did not stop. The executive officer took control and kept the destroyer fighting. Captain James was not a military man, he was a diplomat, but when the captain died, he became captain. He had no training in military command. He had no right to be in the command chair, but he sat there anyway and made decisions that kept his people alive. "Evade and attack," he ordered. "Do not retreat, do not wait for orders. See the enemy and hit them with everything we have." The destroyer's weapons officer was a young woman named Sarah. She had been trained by Commander Lynch. She understood the new human tactics better than anyone. She locked her weapons on 3 different targets and fired at all of them in sequence. One Void Collective ship exploded. The other 2 took critical damage and began limping away. Superior officers on Earth watched the battle through real-time feeds. General Roberts saw humanity fighting better than it had ever fought. But she also saw the cost. Ships were dying, fighters were burning, people were being killed in every second of the battle. "Redirect the medical fleet to coordinates 734, she ordered. "Get the wounded out of combat zones, save who you can." Admiral stood in the Earth Command Center. Around her, displays showed the progress of the battle across 12 fronts. The Void Collective was being beaten, but the cost was high. In space, the battle raged for hours. Slowly, the human advantage became clear. The Void Collective had power and technology, but the humans had something else. They had the ability to adapt. They had the ability to see a problem and solve it in the moment. They did not have to ask permission. They did not have to follow protocol. Commander Lynch's fighter squadron surrounded a Void Collective carrier. The carrier was more powerful than any single human fighter, but the humans were not alone. They moved together. They fired together. They attacked angles that human geometry suggested were impossible. The Void Collective carrier tried to move, but there was nowhere to go. The humans had surrounded it completely. The humans were inside all its defenses. Locked her weapons on the carrier's engine section. She fired everything at once. The carrier's engines went dark. The ship began to fall out of formation, dead in space. She turned to another target. Below on the home world, Lord watched the battle from a military command post. He knew what this fight meant. If the humans won, his people would be free. If the humans lost, his people would be enslaved by the Void Collective forever. The humans were winning, but they were paying for it with blood. Supreme Commander finally understood what was happening. He was losing. The Void Collective, the greatest power in this region of space, was being defeated by a species no one had ever heard of weeks ago. He looked at the casualty reports. Thousands of ships were damaged or destroyed. Millions of soldiers were dead. The Empire was fracturing. Species that had been enslaved for generations were rebelling. The entire structure of Void Collective power was collapsing. "Order a retreat," he said. "Commanders, order all remaining ships to retreat to core territories. We are consolidating to defensive positions. Pull back everything." The Void Collective fleet began to break formation. They started moving away from the battle, running back to their home territory, running to defend what they still had instead of attacking what they did not. Captain David Harrison watched the enemy retreat with disbelief. They had won. Against all odds, against a power that seemed overwhelming, humanity and its allies had won. "Hold position," he ordered. "Do not pursue. Secure the battle area, protect the colony ships, begin rescue operations for survivors." He opened a communication line to the Void Collective. "This is Captain David Harrison of Earth. Your forces are defeated. You can surrender now or you can lose everything. What is your choice? The communication channel was silent for a long time. Then Supreme Commander appeared on the screen. His face showed nothing. His eyes were empty. I surrender the Void Collective Military Forces to your command, he said. The battle was over. Across 12 systems, Void Collective Forces laid down their weapons. The rebellion that had started on enslaved worlds spread and grew. Species that had lived under oppression for centuries rose up and claimed their freedom. The age of the Void Collective was over. Captain Harrison stood in the ruins of the Void Collective Command Center, stood before him, waiting for judgment. The Void Collective commander was old and tired. He had fought for the Empire his entire life. Now that Empire was gone. Your crimes are many, Harrison said. You have conquered worlds, you have enslaved species, you have caused suffering that cannot be measured. He paused. But you surrendered when the outcome was certain. That shows some honor remains in you. The peoples you conquered will decide your fate, not me, not Earth. The species you oppressed will be your judges. He extended his hand. You will stand trial before representatives of every world you enslaved. You will answer for what you have done. That is justice. Looked at the human hand. After a moment he took it. The gesture meant nothing in his culture, but he understood its meaning. The human was offering him the chance to face justice instead of execution. It was more than he deserved. Admiral received the report that the Void Collective had surrendered. She stood in the Earth Command Center and felt the weight lift. They had done it. Against impossible odds, they had changed the galaxy. Send a message to all ships, she said. Well done, you have saved the galaxy. Now we bring our people home. The combined fleet began the long journey back to their home worlds. They carried wounded. They carried prisoners. They carried the knowledge that they had changed the course of history. In the fighter bays, pilots celebrated. They had survived. They had won. They had done something that 3 months after the Void Collective's surrender, Earth held a celebration that the entire galaxy watched. The species that had been enslaved sent representatives to Earth. They came. The beings from 12 different worlds walked under Earth's blue sky and understood for the first time what it meant to be free. Admiral stood on a platform in front of the United Nations building. Thousands of people had gathered. Leaders from every nation on Earth were present. Behind them stood alien visitors from worlds that had suffered under the Void Collective for generations. Today we mark the beginning of a new era, said. Her voice was broadcast to every corner of Earth and transmitted to every allied world. The Void Collective ruled through fear and force. They believed that might made right. They believed that power was everything. She paused. They were wrong. We have proven that courage matters more than weapons. We have proven that a small species from an unknown world can change the galaxy. We have proven that freedom is worth the cost. Captain David Harrison stood beside her. He was no longer just a military officer. He had become the symbol of humanity's role in the galaxy. Children on alien worlds wanted to be like him. Pilots on freed colonies trained in Earth tactics. The story of how humans had arrived and changed everything was already becoming legend. Lord stepped forward. The leader's eyes were bright with emotion. My people were facing destruction, he said. Earth could have refused our call for help. Earth could have stayed silent. Instead, humans chose to sacrifice for strangers. This is a value the Void Collective never understood. This is why they have fallen. He looked at Admiral. Earth is not the most powerful species. Earth is not the most advanced, but Earth is the most human, and that is something no technology can match. Over the following weeks, treaties were signed. A Council of Free Worlds was established. Earth was not the leader of this council, but Earth had a voice that everyone listened to. Captain James, the diplomat who had become a military commander during the battle, now worked on peaceful negotiations. The species that had been enslaved had to decide what to do with their freedom. Some wanted to rebuild their worlds. Others wanted to explore space. Others wanted to join in the human way of thinking and build something new. General Roberts was offered the position of leader of the military forces of the free worlds. She refused. I came to fight, she said. I have fought, now it is time for younger people to lead. My work is finished. She retired to Earth and spent her last years teaching a new generation of soldiers who would never have to fight another war like this one. Commander Lynch continued to train pilots, But now pilots came from 10 different species to learn human tactics. She stood in the training facility and watched young aliens learn to fly in unpredictable patterns. "Do not think like a warrior," she told them. "Think like you have nothing to lose. Think like you are desperate. Desperation makes you fast. Desperation makes you creative." The Void Collective thought like conquerors. That made them predictable. The trials of the Void Collective commanders took months. Supreme Commander faced judges from every enslaved species. He heard testimony from beings whose worlds had been conquered. He listened to the cost of the empire he had served. He was not executed. Instead, he was given life imprisonment on a neutral station. He would have time to think about what he had done. He would have time to understand the suffering he had caused. Captain David Harrison returned to Earth a changed man. He had left as a military officer. He came back as something more important, a symbol of what humans could become. "What is next for you?" Admiral asked him at a reception. "I do not know," Harrison said. "The fighting is over. I am not sure what I am without a war to fight." "Then you find something else to fight for," said. "Peace, justice, understanding. You help the galaxy learn that humans are worth knowing. That is the war that matters now." Dr. Hayes, who had received the original distress signal, was given the position of head of Earth's diplomatic communications. He worked to ensure that Earth's message was understood by every species in the galaxy. The message was simple. Earth would help those in need. Earth would stand for freedom. Earth would never turn away from those crying for help. The Earth Defense Fleet was broken up. Some ships were used to help rebuild enslaved worlds. Some ships were sent to explore space and find species that had not yet been discovered. Some ships were returned to Earth and repurposed. But the memory of those ships and the people who crewed them would never fade. Statues were built on 100 worlds. Human pilots who had died in the battle were remembered as heroes. The cost of freedom was not forgotten. On the home world, a monument was erected. It showed a human figure standing beside the inscription read, "To those who fought so that freedom could live, to those who answered the call of strangers, to those who proved that courage is stronger than conquest." Admiral visited that monument once. She stood before it and thought about the choices she had made. The choice to answer the distress signal. The choice to send Earth's entire fleet. The choice to believe that a species unknown to the galaxy could change everything. All those choices had been right. She was not young anymore. Her work as admiral was coming to an end, but she would not fade into history. She would be remembered as the one who had the courage to say yes when the galaxy needed someone to say yes. 1 year after the Void Collective's surrender, Earth hosted a festival that lasted for 7 days. Species from across the galaxy came to celebrate freedom. They shared music and food and stories. For 7 days, the differences between them seemed to matter less than the things they had in common. On the final night, Admiral stood with Lord on a hill overlooking the Earth sky. The stars were visible overhead. Somewhere out there was the Void Collective's former territory. Somewhere out there were worlds being rebuilt. "Will there be more wars?" asked. "Probably," said. "Species will always have conflicts, but they will not be wars for conquest. They will be wars for belief, and those are the kind wars that end in understanding, not slavery." She looked at "Your people came here to ask for help. You could have asked anyone. Why did you ask Earth?" "We did not know," said. "We sent the signal to the only coordinates we had, the only place where we thought anyone might listen." Earth answered because Earth is alive. Earth is not old and tired like the Void Collective. Earth is new. Earth believes that things can be different. Nodded. "That is what humans do," she said. "We believe that things can be different. We believe that the future is not written yet. We believe that courage can change empires." She turned to look at him directly. "That is why you chose Earth. Not because we were the strongest, but because we were the ones willing to try." Below the hill, Earth celebrated. The festival continued. Species that had never met before shared stories. Pilots who had fought together in the battle exchanged memories of the people they had known. Musicians from 100 worlds played together in harmony. The age of the Void Collective was truly over. A new age had begun. An age where freedom mattered more than power. An age where courage was stronger than weapons. An age where Earth and the humans who called it home were no longer forgotten in the darkness of space. The SOS that had reached Earth months before had changed everything. One species, unknown and young, had answered the call. They had sacrificed, they had fought, they had won, and in winning they had changed the galaxy forever. Captain David Harrison stood at the edge of the celebration and watched the stars. Somewhere out there, the next challenge was waiting. Somewhere out there, another species might need help. Earth would be ready. Because that is what humans do. They answer calls for help. They fight for freedom. They believe that courage can change the universe. And they are never, ever wrong to believe that. The future belonged to those who dared to reach for it, and humanity had reached. The galaxy would never be the same. Deemed impossible. Commander Lynch sat in her fighter with the canopy open. She was looking at the stars. Somewhere in that darkness was Earth, her home, the world that had sent her to fight for freedom. She was going back, and the galaxy would never forget that humans had come to change everything. Ahead of them waited the Void Collective and the destiny of the galaxy. The humans were ready. As different from human custom, but the meaning was the same. Earth and the were now one, and the Void Collective would soon learn what it meant to face species that refused to surrender. And Earth had answered with its entire fleet.